All right, so we're Daniel and Clara. We are two humans working together as one artist. We create moving image, photo works, performances, and lately also letters, which we've been sending out through the post. Whatever medium we're working on, we always focus in on how meaning is constructed and how we create narratives to try to make sense of our own existence and the experiences we have. For the last couple of years, our work has been born from personal encounters with place, but in particular, experiences of journeys through the British countryside. We're interested in exploring the impact that place has on our imagination and our inner lives, and in turn, also how we project what's happening inside us onto the environment around us. So in this talk today, we'll be sharing with you some reflections on the impact that place has had on our creative process during the lockdown.
So we've spent the last few months living on Mersey Island, which is an island that sits at the end of the Blackwater estuary, about 30 minutes from Colchester. We were staying here with family already when lockdown was announced, and due to this ended up staying much longer than we'd anticipated. But we've been quite pleased to be here, and we've been making the most of the situation. So each day we go for a walk, starting here in Windsor Road, where we're currently living, and we head out into the streets and wander down towards the beach. During the first couple of weeks of lockdown, it was incredibly quiet, and we could easily go for a walk for an hour or more and not see a single person or hear a single car. And this was quite magical. This experience for us stirred up the sort of memories of childhood in a way. When you sort of wake up in the morning and the world is foggy or there's snow everywhere, and the sort of familiar environment has been transformed in some way, enabling you to see it sort of see the familiar differently. But of course, it wasn't kind of magical in the same way that it was with those experiences, because there was an anxiety tied to it. Brought on by obviously the situation, these sort of doom-laden daily news announcements and the increasing death tolls, and the first reports of residents on the island getting sick. So all of this was feeding into this fear and anxiety. And then there was also the personal stresses of losing work. Within about 48 hours, we had all of our upcoming work and exhibitions and projects completely cancelled. And the only thing we knew with any certainty is that we were probably going to be spending a lot of time living here on the island. So we've not left Mersey now for about 3 months, and every day we've walked this route. And as we walk, we talk through our projects, the motion of our feet stimulating the motion of the mind, and ideas that we are having connect with the places that we're passing. And as we pass those same places on the following days, we sometimes pick up the conversation of previous days. So this has been our process for these months: walking, talking, creating images, and circling around a set of ideas.
This road that we've just been in is called Oakwood Avenue, and the name plus the few oaks that are dotted along the road, as well as in this field, always makes us imagine that maybe there would have been a large oak woodland here before all the houses were built. When the lockdown first started, these oaks were completely bare. As you can see them now, and these images were taken in the last couple of weeks, they are completely covered with leaves. Because of lockdown, we've been able to watch the coming of spring day by day. Maybe some of you that have had access to green spaces have experienced something similar. The forced immobility has turned out to be an opportunity to pay more attention to what surrounds us and becoming aware of changes that we might have missed before. So from the field, we cross the road down to the beach and we stomp along the sand heading east. Mersey Beach is a mix of sand and shingle, and as we walk, we often find hagstones, and we've been collecting them. Hagstones are stones with naturally formed holes in them that are created by the action of the water. We find them fascinating, as there are stories that say that if you look through the hole, you can see into the ferry rail. Sometimes we find stones that look like they have a hole, but when we look closer, it turns out that it's just a dent. So we throw those back into the sea and we let the waves continue their work. So maybe in a couple of 100 years, they'll be finished. This is an area that we call the Dragon's Nest. It's a thick cluster of trees and overgrown bushes with a little path that winds through it. Even though it's quite a small area, we find it very mysterious. The trees and the undergrowth are knit together in a wild entanglement that surrounds you completely. And when you're in it, the light and sound changes. Next to it, there is a lane lined with trees. And it weaves its way between the fields all the way back to the main road. This lane has become the main place of interest to us. And this is where we've been spending a lot of our time looking and listening.
So our process is one of following images. We're always moving forwards with a sense of unknowing, and we put a lot of trust in our creative impulse, and we do everything we can to allow our projects to materialize in an unrestrained way. And during the first couple of weeks of lockdown, for some reason we became obsessed with hedges. And this probably had something to do with the emergence of spring, being able to visibly see them change day by day. And we just felt compelled to photograph and film and draw images of hedges without really knowing why or what they were kind of expressing for us. And it didn't take long before we focused particularly on the hedges of this lane. And the more we looked and sort of at and into the hedges, the more we started to kind of unpick the symbolic meaning as an artistic image. Hedges divide space. They separate property. They are borders. They mark the lines between land. They stand between the public and the private. But they're an in-between space, but they're also a world in themselves, sustaining the life of birds, mammals, insects, and plants. And they're also a mythic space, a space to hide, a space to build dens or discard of things unwanted, a place to maybe bury something out of sight. And they are threshold spaces, and like all thresholds, they have a certain mystery and magical quality about them. And from here, our interest zoomed in on looking at thorns. We sketched them with pen and ink, and with this process, we started to get closer to maybe what this was expressing about our state of mind. Thorns, of course, have a danger about them. To touch them is to be wounded. They are designed to harm. In fairy tales such as Briar Rose, they surround the kingdom which sleeps under an enchantment. And any questing prince who tries to enter will instantly fall into a slumber when they touch the brambles, and they'll be taken into the barbed branches like arms. So the thorns here also can protect. They allow the kingdom to remain asleep until the moment is right to wake again. And the plants have their own wisdom about them, which is beyond the human wisdom. So while the kingdom sleeps, all action is ceased, life is on hold. And in these moments, we go within and we dream. And we wait. And this waiting can be frustrating, and it can be a heavy burden. In a way, it's a form of depression. And it feels to us that these last few months has been a bit like being under an enchantment. We've been cut off from the normal flows of life, and we've had to reflect upon our actions, the way that we live, and the way that we interact with each other And we've even had to think about our own personal relationships to suffering. And this period has been unique in the sense that what's affecting us all personally is also affecting everyone globally. So it's as if the whole planet is under the same spell. So this is an image by one of our favourite painters, Graham Sutherland, whose work has had a big influence on how we think about landscape and art. And it was through looking at his paintings of thorns that we kind of realised something that maybe is quite obvious, that the most frequent portrayal of thorns in European art is in the crown of thorns, which was placed on Christ's head before he was crucified. And here we have no clearer image of suffering and surrender. The crown of thorns, which was meant as a mocking torture to Jesus's kingliness, is no clearer image of the endurance of suffering that we all experience as human beings. So I think in these moments we have no choice but to surrender, to let the difficulties and pain be our teachers. And this is really what we've been thinking about a lot during these daily walks as we circle around the island and stare into the hedges. Also, during the first weeks of lockdown, while we were still trying to process what the pandemic meant for us, we looked at the tarot and pulled this card, which is called the Hanged Man. Notice how he's not hung by the neck, but he's hung by the feet. He's taken out of action and suspended above the earth. So Sleeping Beauty, Christ, the Hanged Man, for us, these all help us understand what these unprecedented times, we've been cast into a kind of in-between zone, a space where the normal course of society has been halted. And in this time, we've had to change, and we've been forced to rethink many things. And for us, we always turn to creativity as a matter of survival. It's really quite essential to us. And through walking and making images, we've been able to begin to kind of make sense of this situation that we found ourselves in.
So every day we've been coming to the lane, we've been looking, listening, recording and drawing. And all this material and all these thoughts have been coming together into a new project, which we are calling Interior Exterior. This is still forming, and each day as we look into the hedges, we let it grow and form as freely as possible. At the moment, we are envisioning an installation with multiple screens, text works, photos and objects, a space in which the enchantment of the hedge comes into the gallery. And hopefully we can cast a spell over the viewers so they can get a glimpse into the stream. We're emerging from the lane now. From here, it's a quick walk to the main road and then till we're back home. When we get in, we usually have a cup of tea and we make notes about things that we talked about during the walk and look back at the footage and photos that we've taken. And then the following day, the process starts again. We go back along the walk and we pick up where we left off in our conversations and in our looking. This walk really has become an essential part of our life at this moment. It's become the way that we've found to cope with the anxiety and uncertainty. And in a way, the very fact that we feel the need to repeat the same walk every day is perhaps a way to establish some sense of certainty when everything else seems up in the air, making us feel so vulnerable and disorientated. On the route, we find both repetition and change, moving at a certain speed. And by encountering it every day and being able to focus our attention on it, we find a way back into ourselves. We let our thoughts spread out along the walk and intertwine with the various things that we encounter. And then we can come back to the same thoughts on other walks of the days to come. And we often find that they have mutated and now reveal something new that we hadn't known before. So even though we are walking in circles, we never quite end up in the same place as we started.
Okay. So we have a little bit of time if anyone has any comments or questions. I guess we have to unmute you. You can type comments in the box at the bottom. I think there's already some here.
Oh, that's interesting. So there's a comment from Thea.
Can everyone see these? Or I think these are visible to everyone, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So can you make this bigger?
Yeah. So in response to Thea's comment about the importance of creating new rituals, is in a way what this whole thing has been about to us, to kind of create a kind of sense of that we can grab hold of where we are, even when everything just seems like unpredictable. Should we then go through each of them?
Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading through.
It's quite
so, was walking a part of our practice before lockdown started? Probably less consciously, I think. I think we would walking something we've always done, and I think maybe what's happened is by being here we've become more conscious of how that is and bringing that actually into the work. So it's usually the place where we discuss ideas and get away from the computer and get out of the house. But I think it's like the sort of the process is merging into the work more, I would say.
Yeah, I think it was always a way for us to develop ideas or work through problems. And what's happened now is that the actual work is emerging from the walk in this situation. And maybe because we are confined, to this specific area.
Yeah, this question about, do you get a sense of temporal distortion in the lane, as in an extension or shortening of your own sense of time spent there? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I think because also we're going there every day, it's very hard to kind of also work out what's happening on which day, I think. So maybe, we sort of have an experience on one day, because the thing is repetitive, we're never sure whether it was yesterday or a week ago that a certain activity took place, that we did a certain image, or that we experienced a certain thing. But I think also because we sort of go in there, I think we do lose track of time because we sometimes go into the lane part and we do wander up and down as well. Obviously, we presented this as a continuous walk, but we will sometimes wander up and down for hours in there, or we'll even kind of go there in the morning, go again there at different times of day, and then again in the evening.
Mm-hmm. And there's also the sense that sometimes that, you know, there were certain moments already during this period where we've had kind of like revelations about certain things we were doing, or even, you know, our feeling has changed about certain things we were going through. And so it's almost like there's our experiences of the lane before those and then after those, and somehow it almost feels like it's a different space, or because we've changed, and that changes, and that space somehow allowed that change to happen. So the kind of in a way create the lane became a space where a certain kind of thinking could happen and a certain kind of experience could happen, and I think that's why it's also, when we realize that, why it became so interesting.
Have I missed any?
Oh, thanks. It's nice. Yeah, we kind of wanted to combine these images of, you know, the one you're saying about using Google Maps with footage and images that we create. In a way, Google Maps has become a way that we experience place as well, and we've used it a couple of times before in our work. Before we go to a place, we often look on Google Maps and kind of get a sense of how you move through it, but you also see how it looks from a bigger view, and that kind of changes your awareness of the space, and, you know, visually. But also combining it with our own investigation, you know, insight, and through time as well.
Ah, that sounds good. We haven't read that. That sounds interesting.
This is Esteban's comment that we're replying to. We haven't read this book yet. Yeah,
I think that's the main thing that we're really interested in, is the nature of experience, and our own interest specifically is in place, and how this, what really, we can't separate sort of our inner experience from the outer experience. When we go to a place, we bring with it so much. We bring with it our previous preconceptions about that place and our ideas about that place, and for us, we bring with it our interest in art history. So when we look at Thorns, we start thinking of Sutherland, and then you know, Christ and the paintings of these things. It's like those things have impacted how we see the world, and I think that's something we're always really interested in. How do we kind of create a work of art that shows how we experience? And I think this talk has been an experiment in a way of trying to kind of show the sense of the footage from going there and actually being there, but then also the kind of other stuff, the references that are on our mind, and then also the research material, which is often we look at things on maps before we go there. So this whole web of things that makes up our nature of experience, which in some way is impossible to really express through art, but somehow we feel compelled to try.
I think our personal experience of art is that art somehow is a container for, you know, the consciousness of humanity across time, and you can kind of look back at the most ancient examples of art and feel like you can understand something of what that experience was, and so also relating it to your own experience, when you can look back at works of art and kind of get something that maybe that person at that time managed to grab from the unconscious or from their own experience, that could be can make you understand our own experience now, and enrich our experience. Yeah, definitely. Thea is pointing this thing that we definitely experienced, that the fact that there was less cars, no airplanes, the sort of like lowering of human activity brought up all the other life forms that are always around us. But it's almost like that we gave them more space, and also gave us more. We can give it more attention.
Yeah. And I think this sense of being fixed in one spot and looking at the same thing again and again, I think it's like that in itself has made us sort of super tuned in to kind of observing birds, like recognizing the same birds coming back to the garden, or seeing in the lane we always see this robin. There's a certain bit where you see this same robin hopping around, and I think it's partly to do with that as well. I think the reducing cars has definitely helped, but also just the fact that we've focused in our view on a particular space.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a real gift of this strange time. And I don't know, how are other people, where is everybody else? It'd be great to kind of like know where you all are, and if you're sort of having similar experiences.
If you want to speak also, we can unmute you.
So Paul Morris.
In Lewisham.
Has seen a moorhen nest, and watching eggs hatching.
We actually have
Cambridge. Yeah.
We have I think a nest of blackbirds that is just on the roof next to the window. This room just has a window on the roof, and we started to realize at 4 a.m, when the sun rises, they start singing and kind of waking us up. So we've had this sun, sharing a waking time and sleep time with this blackbirds, which has been quite interesting.
Thea's seen a polecat. I've never seen a polecat. That's amazing. And Colette. Yes, so Colette's saying about how, the cars and planes, the world is starting to get noisy again. And it feels like this enchantment is being lifted.
I think in a way, as difficult as lockdown could be on many levels, this thing of human activity sort of coming, reducing, and the ability to give more space to nature has been a very good thing, and something that maybe, this is the kind of thing that maybe we would hope would happen more, that we would take that more into consideration. But yeah, we can see it already here on Mersey that people started moving around. Oh, that's a very interesting question. What are the things that you will try to hold on to into your practice into the future from this experience?
I think in a way, we've almost been looking for an opportunity to kind of be in one place like this and focus in. So in some ways it's kind of confirmed that that's something that we personally need, is to kind of be out of the city and to be able to just sense it, with our work, spend sort of sustained amounts of time just looking, and not kind of, often when you're making projects, especially if they've already got a kind of exhibition date planned, you're kind of working to a deadline and there's this kind of pressure, and it means that you kind of often are rushing things through. And I think having this sort of period of time where we're not working towards a deadline, we're just able to look, and we don't have, sometimes we can just go and spend time listening and looking and reflecting upon the experience before we actually start making things. I think that has been something that we've sort of felt like we needed, and it's kind of confirmed to us that that's really an important part of the creative process, that hopefully we can in some ways carry on giving space to that kind of focused attention.
I think especially with the ability to to kind of see how a place changes, and also explore how these ideas can be translated into different mediums, and what the different mediums explore, which is something that a lot of the times we don't have time to do. So the fact that we can look at the same things through photograph, through recording, and then making drawings, and then, you know, editing and playing with sound, all of those things can actually really help bring out certain ideas that maybe we wouldn't necessarily get to. Yeah.
Yeah, so this thing that Colette's saying about amazing how the closer into something that you look, the more universal truths that you find. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we're kind of more and more giving time to. And I think for us, it's always, we kind of just have instincts where we kind of become obsessed with images, and we don't really know why. And we just look and look and look. And then we kind of start to relate it to other uses of that image. And it always seems to reveal something. It's like, but at first there's this period of unknowing that's really fruitful. And I think really important to almost like protect that for a moment. And then it goes through, and then you start to kind of connect it to the wider kind of maybe expression of that thing.
Yeah, I think also for us, this the hedge has sort of been taking more and more of an importance throughout even maybe before the lockdown started, but also because we've been in our work recently, we've been thinking a lot about how just looking at natural forms and relating them to narrative, and using those to kind of create different kinds of narratives, so that we can, you know, explore alternatives to like the 3-act structure and the ideologies that come with that, and other kinds of similar narratives that kind of seem to reinforce certain ideas and certain ways of behaving and expectations. And looking at nature, we kind of, for us, is a useful way to kind of just come out of that and think about different experiences, even of time and space.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's that Colette's last comment is something that maybe we need to work out. And I think, yeah, it's hard.
It's hard, yeah. But I think there's another thing not to forget, is that maybe we've already been changed through this experience. Something has already shifted, and we kind of maybe always kind of go back into that and hold on to that, and use that also to make decisions, you know, and just trust that wherever's happening, there's something that is right somehow. You never know what really can be brought out of a situation. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting, for example, the creation, now that we've been doing a lot of, not us necessarily, but everything has sort of moved online, and you know, events that would have been physical things can happen through this, and in a way it's great. And I think it has made this time and this experience a lot easier for everyone than it would have been, you know, if it was decades ago and we didn't have the internet. At the same time, it's kind of weird. It's a different sort of way of communicating and experiencing. And again, this is just something that maybe there's certain things that have shifted and that we've all experienced that we hadn't experienced before. that maybe will bring different solutions for thinking about what is, collective, and how do we behave all together, not just necessarily we're in the immediate togetherness, but togetherness that is separate.
Okay, so I reckon it's time to wrap up, because there's going to be another presentation. I'm not sure where's the next one. Someone from Metal maybe could. Is it on Instagram?
Yeah, anyway, you can check on the Metal Culture UK Instagram page and you can see the next event.
Yeah, it's on there. So on the Metal Instagram, Rachel House is going to be doing the next one at 3 o'clock. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks so much for all the comments and discussions. Really great questions.
Yeah, and thank you to Metal for hosting. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you.